Dear respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد الأمين وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Thank you for joining us once more on this, your live show, Back to the Basics, in which we go back to the basics of analyzing our differences and finding an appropriate means of discussing and which topics to discuss with people who have key differences with us, the proponents of the school of the Ahlul Bayt. You're joining me, your host, Yahya Seymour, live from the holy city of Karbala. And it's Thursday night. It's one of the most busy days in Karbala's week because, of course, Thursday is one of the days in which the Zawar are recommended to come to the holy city of Karbala en masse. And the traditions are quite clear that this is the most recommended day from the days of the week in order to do the visitation of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. So every week of the year, regardless of the time, it's always very busy in Karbala. And alhamdulillah, we have the blessing of being able to visit the shrines. Of course, you, the viewers, are all in our visitations and our du'as. But dear viewers, we have been discussing topics of the utmost importance, and particularly the topic of the intellect. Throughout the past few episodes, we have been looking at how the intellect plays a crucial role in the original Islam. And when I say the original Islam, I mean the Islam as was revealed, taught and espoused by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. The Islam which was taught by him and the Islam which was inherited and taught by his inheritors, the holy Imams, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon them, the Islam which was espoused by Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam, and the Islam which has been brought to you with a very heavy price, the price of the blood of the oppressed and the martyrs throughout history, the companions of the Imams who died in very critical and dire circumstances at times. Do not forget the price which has been paid to bring to you and preserve for you this pristine religion. Never forget that price, for that price is something which, of course, did not come lightly. And these great ancestors of the modern day Shia, when I say the ancestors, I mean spiritual ancestors, they are those who laid down their lives in order to bring us this truth in the face of very oppressive regimes and very oppressive, deviated religions and worldviews. Of course, in the past few episodes we have been discussing the concept of the intellect, the aql. And we've been talking about how certain worldviews undermine the very ability to understand and use the aql through their contradictory claims and indeed at times their outright rejection of the ability of the aql to actually discern between truth and falsehoods. Of course, we primarily focused upon the claims in the past few episodes of Dr. Alex Rosenberg and his scientism worldview, a worldview which is based upon atheism, in which we understand that everything in the universe is just physical. It is only the physical understanding of the phenomenon around us, our experiences, our thoughts, which is to be given credence to. But of course, because a thought is an immaterial thing and we live in a physical universe, therefore, according to Alex Rosenberg, there is no such thing as a thought. It's an illusion. Similar to the way that a movie might appear that there is people in front of you, but it's just a set of images which is being played back to you in an illusory way. So we have the roots of Dr. Alex Rosenberg, outright denial of the human intellect, in addition to about 7 other concepts which are quite crucial for human life, morality and other things which we're not discussing right now. You have the others who deny the intellect too. You have the Charles Darwin camp and those who understand humans in light of evolution. And when I say evolution, that is not to say that we are talking about the theory of evolution, the scientific theory. By the way, of course, we are familiar with the fact that theory in science means something completely different than what it would mean in philosophy or in the conventions of everyday English language usage. I'm not implying that this is not something that is very well backed within science. I'm just saying that we are not talking about that scientific theory. That is not our concern at the moment. Our concern is solely the implications of the theory for those scientists who happen to be atheists that believe in it. Because they believe there was no intelligence which placed for us this mechanism known as natural selection or Darwinian evolution or survival of the fittest. They believe that we have essentially every single species within this universe, with the exception of course, those which are replicated in a lab through things like cloning, have essentially come down in a great line of ancestral history. And of course, some species are our cousins. But we have essentially come down from one unique ancestor. And of course, when I say ancestor here, I mean a type of life form. And of course, that would be the most basic form of life. Essentially, we're all related to one another, and from that basic form of life, over millions and billions of years, we have seen this development into now what we have as a massive, wild range of diversity, different animals, different species, different genus of species, but all with one common ancestor. Now, if you believe that this was a process unguided, unfacilitated by a facilitator or guide, you essentially believe it's a blind process. It's a process that occurs naturally, that species who are stronger and have more dominant traits would survive, and those species or those individuals which are weaker would of course die out because they wouldn't be able to cope in this vastly wild world. Now, according to this theory, and according to those who say that this is an unguided process, these atheist scientists like Patricia Churchland, like Charles Darwin himself, and there are of course others, they state what? They state that this theory, because it's true, and because we know natural selection is geared towards what? It's not geared towards who can calculate mathematical problems. It's not geared towards who has the best answer to the problems raised by Kierkegaard or Kant or Descartes. It's not geared towards solving the problems raised by Bertrand Russell or people like Sartre. Rather, human beings and their mind are geared towards 4 things. The 4 F's: fighting, fleeing, food, and reproduction. Now, of course, do bear in mind, dear viewers, it's not me that entitled them the 4 F's. It was Patricia Churchland. I use that saying for simplicity. I'm not in any way endorsing her veiled joke. Might be humorous for some, but that's not my intention in mentioning it. Rather, my intention in mentioning it is to summarize her words as they were said. We have Charles Darwin, who states that he would never quite fully understand if he could trust his own mind, because would anyone trust the truth discoveries of a mind of a monkey if a monkey even has a mind? Now, I know that there's some atheists out there watching probably saying, oh dear God, another believer, he still believes that human beings are evolved from monkeys according to the theory of evolution. I'm not saying that's what the theory of evolution is. I'm just summarizing what the words of Charles Darwin were. I know that evolution teaches that us and the apes have a common ancestor, and I'm not saying that we evolved from apes according to the theory of evolution. I'm just summarizing what Darwin said. Darwin's saying that if our cousins, we wouldn't trust them to have minds that work out these complicated things, then why would we trust our own? And that's if we could even say that these apes have minds. Patricia Churchland says what? She says that if, with the exception of the 4 F's, there's nothing that our brains are geared towards doing. And that truth, and I quote, truth, whatever that is, takes the hindmost. It's one of the least priorities of natural selection. So that is the atheist view towards how much we can trust our aql. Those are a group who state explicitly we can't trust the aql. And yet they reach this conclusion using the aql. Then you have a second group who we've looked at, and they were in fact the first group we looked at, who say that you can't trust the aql. But how do they say it? They say it implicitly. Why? Because they'll tell you, of course we trust the aql. The true aql would never contradict the true text. That's interesting. And we thank you for saying that. It's a statement that if true, would have definitely given your religion and your worldview a lot more for people to consider. But then in practice, what did we see? We saw that every single argument which is used for the existence of God from a rational framework, from looking at the limitations of creation, when applied to their deity, would lead us to believing we can't trust this mind at all. Because if we were to trust the mind on their worldview, we would reject their theology. But because there's many people that don't reject their theology, they must suspend the intellect. And that's exactly what they do. They say, look, we affirm that Allah sits on the throne, and when Allah sits on the throne, it makes this screeching noise out of the weight of Allah Azza wa Jal. Atayt. But we don't know what this means. We'll suspend judgment. We're not going to affirm what that means. This is the secondary camp, which I call the camp who suspend the value of the intellect. So you have one which completely rejects the value of intellect. You have another that suspends the value of the intellect. And as we said, there's another group who make their hawa, their desires, their Lord. So they conflate between intellect and dhawq. And this is something which is very problematic when discussing with anyone about the intellect. So these are the varying schools when it comes to the intellect within the different religions in the world. There are even some out there who would claim that we can trust that 2 contradictory things can exist at the same time. And this is a new method being utilized within the realm of the new atheist framework of discussing by making an appeal to the science we now know as quantum mechanics. Of course, dear brothers and sisters, we now need to go to a short break, but when we come back, I will elaborate more on what I have been saying. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, thank you so much for enduring with us on that short break. And before the break, of course, I'm sure many of you would have been with us before the break, but we were discussing the various positions in regards to the human intellect. Now, for those of you who are not aware and were not able to see the first set of shows within this, your show Back to the Basics, we discussed the position of the Imams, alayhim salam, which is of course the position of the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and his family, which of course is the position of Allah Azza wa Jal when it comes to the intellect. And we stated that it is essentially a hujjah on par with the greater hujjah, the Imam. Now of course this is in reference to the pure aql. This is not in reference to dhawq, and there is a big difference between aql and dhawq. Aql is of course intellect and reason, whereas dhawq is that which we believe is reason, that which we think is rational. When someone asks you, well, why do I pray 5 times a day? That doesn't seem rational to me, I should be praying 10. That's not reason. That's just you trying to figure out what the reason for praying 5 times a day is. Reason would literally be where you see 2 contradictions in front of you and you understand that 2 contradictions could never exist. Someone gives you an option which is two contradictions. Someone tells you that Barry both passed his test with flying colors and failed it at the same time. You know that this must be a metaphor because it's impossible that someone could both pass a test with flying colors and fail it if the test is being marked with the same standards and we're talking about the same test. So that is where your aql would come in. Now, of course, when it comes to this aql, the Imams have described it in numerous different ways. Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, alayhi salatu wassalam, Sadiq al-Muhammad, he states what? He states that the aql is that by which Ar-Rahman is worshipped. The aql is that by which Allah Azza wa Jal is worshipped, and that by which the gardens of Jannah are attained. So we see a very high position is granted to the concept of the human intellect. More importantly, we also see that the Imams in other places have referred to the aql as one of the hujjaj of Allah. In the same way that the Imam is the outer hujjah, the aql is the inner hujjah. And so, naturally, this all makes sense, and this makes sense in light of our worldview, because anyone who understands that we have been created by Allah Azza wa Jal would know that Allah Azza wa Jal would not endow us with such an amazing tool for discerning between truth and falsehood, only to expect us to suspend it when it comes to judging the truth claims of revelation. And so we see that the aql must be respected and given the high status and stature that it is afforded within our school of thought. Any school of thought which rejects and completely neglects and completely undermines the concept of the aql is something which cannot be reasoned with, because how do you reason with someone who undermines the ability to trust reason itself? Now, of course, one of the basic foundational narrations given to us by the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam about the intellect and its properties is the great wasiyah given to us and found in the book Tuhaf al-Uqul of Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salatu wasalam to one of the great companions, Hisham ibn al-Hakim. May Allah forgive Hisham, and may Allah preserve him from the tongues of the masses who choose to slander him until this day. The Imam states in his wasiyah, and we're going to read some of it out here inshallah ta'ala. God, the elevated, portends good to the people of reason and understanding in his book. He states, "Give the glad tidings to those of our scholars who listen to the words and only follow the best ones. Tell them that they are those whom God has guided. They are the people of understanding." Now this is of course Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, Ayah 17 to 18. O Hisham ibn al-Hakim, God the Majestic has certainly submitted his arguments to people perfectly through minds, explained everything completely to them, and led people to his Godhead through the guides. He says, "Your Lord is the only Lord, there is no Lord but He, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The creation of the heavens and the earth, the alteration of the nights and the days, from the ships that sail in the sea for the benefit of the people, the water that God sends from the sky to revive the dead earth, where he has scattered all kinds of animals, the winds of all directions, and the clouds rendered for service between the sky and the earth, are all evidence of his existence for those who use their reason. O Hisham, God the Majestic provides the people having a manager as the evidence on the acknowledgement of him. He says, God has made the day and the night, the sun and the moon, and all the stars subservient to you by his command. In this there is evidence of the truth for people of understanding. Allah states, Hamim, I swear by the glorious book we have made it an Arabic text, so that perhaps you may understand. Allah also states, also of the evidence of his existence are his showing you lightning which gives you fear and hope, and his sending water down from the sky, which revives the earth after its death. In this there is meaning of truth for people of understanding. O Hisham, God then preaches to the people of reason and makes them desirous of a world to come. He states, the worldly life is but useless amusement and sport compared to the life hereafter, which is far better and is only for the pious. Will you not then understand? Allah also states, whatever you have been given are only the means of enjoyment and beauty of the worldly life. But the means of enjoyment which you will receive from God in the life to come will be better and everlasting. Will you then not take heed? O Hisham, God then warns the unintelligent against his chastisement. He, the majestic, states, then we totally destroyed the others. You pass by the ruined town in the morning and at night. Will you not then understand? O Hisham, Allah then expounds that the mind is always favoring knowledge. He states, these are but parables which we tell to human beings, but only the learned ones understand them. O Hisham, Allah then disparages those who are incapable of understanding when He states, when some people are asked to follow the revelations of Allah, they say, we would rather follow what our fathers have followed, even though their fathers had no understanding and could not find true guidance. Allah states, the wickedest beasts in the sight of God are the deaf and the dumb who have no understanding. Of course, when we say deaf and dumb here, we don't mean literally. We mean they are deaf and dumb in that they have no understanding. Allah also states, if you ask them who has created the heavens and the earth, they will most certainly say, God has created them. Say, it is only Allah who deserves all praise, but most of them do not know. God then disparages the majority. He states, most of the people in the land will lead you away from God's guidance if you follow them. And of course, this is a trend we see in today's community. We see it in our own community, in the Shia community. We see it in a lot of communities where people have this tribalism, where they want to stick with their crew, their posse, their ancestry. They want to say that, look, these guys have it right, and I don't really care what the text says because I trust what these guys say. And this really is one of the problems of today. Human beings who claim to follow the revelation of Allah Azza wa Jal are falling prey to exactly the same problems that the previous communities which Allah Azza wa Jal addresses in the Quran had fallen into. O Hisham, Allah thereafter praises the minority. He states, very few of my servants are grateful, except for the righteously striving believers who are very few. No one believed in him except a few. O Hisham, God then mentions the people of the reasonable understanding in the best way of praise and describes them in the best wording. He says, God gives wisdom to anyone whom He wants. Whoever is given wisdom certainly has received much good. Only people of reason can grasp this. Now this is the most beautiful advice given to Hisham ibn al-Hakam by Imam Musa bin Ja'far. And inshallah ta'ala we wish to be of those who are able to follow it. Dear viewers, we have ran out of time and I thank you once more for joining us from the holy city of Karbala. And please keep us in your du'as in a night like this. It's very important. I myself have many things which I need to have fulfilled. So please do not forget us in your du'as. And we certainly shall never forget any of you in our du'as likewise. Join us, inshallah ta'ala, on Saturday, in which we continue this discussion and continue to quote this wasiyah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.